Hello and welcome to another episode of Ken Training, where we want to give you the training that you need to tackle projects like this one on your own. Today's project is training on air compressor low oil switches. I have two switches right here. This is the Ingersoll Rand part. I'll have a description in the and links to purchase either one of these switches, but this switch here seems to be a more hardier switch. I got this switch here from compressorpartsstore.com, and I got this green one here. It was on sale, normal price $229, and I got it on sale for $138. Now the normal Ingersoll Rand, which is part number 322-76313, sells on Amazon for $272.65. And I'm going to take these two, well, I'm not going to take the green one apart because it's not necessary, but we'll test it and I'll show you how the whole thing works. And we're going to install these, we're going to install this green one here inside of a Ingersoll Rand 15T air compressor that I just had rebuilt. And I want to we're going to get that compressor online. So I'll show you exactly how many quarts of oil it takes in order for the switch to be made. And we're going to install it so that it's going to be a normally open switch. So the oil level has to be up in order to close the circuit. When the oil level comes down, the circuit opens up and you take your compressor offline because for some reason you're running low on oil. So with that, I am going to give you as much training on these switches as possible in the shortest period of time possible, and I only ask for you to do one thing for me, and that is to hit that like button right now. And with that, let's go on with the show. The air compressor that I'm dealing with had this switch on it installed, and this switch here, when I removed it, I did not remove it properly, and this float which is supposed to be attached right through here. What happened was I unscrewed this from the faceplate, and when I did that, I did not remove this first. And because I did not remove this first, this is supposed to have a continuous connection from here, and it's supposed to operate this lever arm here. This lever arm here, what that does is it communicates with this switch. Okay, the way that this switch operates, I have my meter right here, and you can see that if I put the meter on continuity, and I've got it connected to the two leads that are connected to the switch, that's installed in the normally closed position. And then when you make the switch opens the circuit. So the way that this particular switch is installed in the circuit, okay, first of all, this is how your float mechanism works on this type of a float switch. So when this float comes up this way, the arm comes down this way. Mine's broken because when I took it off, I did not pull this off to allow this to spin freely without this hitting the switch. And because I took it off incorrectly, I broke this particular switch. That is why I had to purchase the new switch. But what I'm trying to explain to you is how this works. So this way, when the float is down, what it's doing is it is making the switch up, but on this switch here, because it's installed normally closed, it opens the switch under a low oil level, and when the oil level comes up, it releases the tension off of the micro switch, and then it closes the circuit, allowing the compressor to run. Oh, by the way, this switch here is rated at only 0.4 amps at 575 volts, or at 250 volts, it's only rated at 1/4 of an amp. Now, when I went to go, so because I broke this switch and I want to install a new switch, I had choices to buy the exact same switch, or in my case, I bought a generic replacement switch. Now, the replacement switch, this switch here, $275. The generic replacement switch, which gives you everything that this switch does here, except it's all metal construction instead of plastic construction here, and it gives you the ability to do normally open, normally closed. This switch also gives you that ability. You would just have to take those terminals that are down there and put it from the normally closed to the from the normally closed lead to the normally open lead. Now, on this switch here, on the replacement switch, which by the way, it came in this box here from the compressor parts store, and then here is the part model number, and also on the bottom of the box here, plus I'll have links in the description below. Okay, we are working now in the air compressor room. This is air compressor 1, this is air compressor 2. Air compressor 1 has the front end cover removed. There's no oil. This is the one that we're going to put the switch on that goes right there in that little port. The air compressor 2 is in service and will be cycling off and on. Here is an oil pressure, a low oil switch right here that's already in service on air compressor 2. And here is, and these are both 15 horsepower compressors, and this is the control panel. Let's open up the control panel and show you inside. Okay, to open up the control panel, we're going to shut off both disconnects. There's these switches. They're that need to be in the open position. This is the closed position here. Just open them up. I've already done so on all of them. Let me just make sure they're all good. And sometimes you have to move these slightly in order to open up your panel. Now, when you're looking at the incoming panel, the electricity normally always comes in and works its way from the top down. So even though I shut the disconnect switch off 1 and 2, even though I've done that, we still have live 480 volt 3-phase right there at the top. Let me give you a little close up. All right, so that what happens is the 3-phase electricity comes in, and then it splits off to the 2 disconnect switches, 1 on the left and 2 on the right. And you can see that labeled right there and right there. I've already pulled the fuses on the compressor that we're working on to guarantee me that compressor 1 will not start till I put the oil in the machine and I actually want it to start. And now, what we need to do is we need to figure out how to wire in our switch. So for that, we look on the panel board and we can see a schematic diagram here. Now, whenever you look at a schematic diagram and you're not used to it, it takes a minute to digest it. But in our case, what we're seeing here is we're seeing compressor 1 is on the top here. Let me try to show you with my screwdriver here. Compressor 1 is on the top here, and compressor 2 is on the bottom here. And what we're doing is we are going with this switch right here. This is the low oil level switch for compressor 1. This is us. So when the oil level is appropriate, it's a closed switch allowing the circuit to be completed to allow the compressor to run when it's calling for it. If the oil level gets low, it will open the switch, preventing which will take out the safety circuit for our compressor. So with that information, we now know how to wire up our compressor. Okay, what I should have said is with that information, now we know how to wire up our low oil level switch. So I have my leads connected right now to the black and to the green, and here's the top. So this is when we install it. This is how this has to be installed so that this is on top. When the oil level comes up, we make the switch. You can see it on my meter. We make the switch. So we're going to install it in the normally open position. It closes on a correct level of oil, and then that's how we're going to wire our switch. The two wires that we want to land are the black and the green. We'll cap off the red wire. Right now I'm going to give you a close-up view of what it looks like inside the compressor right after it's been rebuilt. I got my flashlight here so you can see the inside. So the inside cavity is nice and clean. This here is your counterweight assembly that I'm touching right there, which is for the compressor unloading when the compressor stops. It hits the thrust pin, which is this pin right here. We're going to put that in. That thrust pin goes on the back of the front end cover in right here, like this. I'll show you. Goes in right here. We'll put a little bit of oil on that O-ring, but this will depress against this section where my finger is, where the counterweights, when they retract on the compressor stop, it pushes that thrust pin out, and it allows the compressor through the tubing here to relieve its pressure on the cylinder head, so that way when it starts up unloaded. This on the rocker arms on your on the crank rocker arms right here that I'm touching, this here is a splash section where it splashes the oil as the compressor rotates. So this particular compressor does not have a pump. It uses splash lubrication, and that's how it gets its lubrication. And basically that is all you can really see on the inside and here on the back of the front end cover. There's a little, you can see the dipstick here for the oil right there, and then here this is just a cover, so it kind of tries to keep the area where the float switch is located here on the inside of the crankcase to not get so much splashing around. Now I am not going to install this one. This is the one that is broken. I'm just demonstrating that if this was a good switch and you wanted to install it, you would disconnect this cover from the switch portion. You would take your float mechanism, fold it down so it fits inside the opening, and then gently put that in. Keep going. There we go. And then once you get into here, you could take this to make sure that the float is operating freely on the inside, make sure it would operate freely. And then with the cover removed, you can go ahead and screw that right in. And then once you got that in, you would, if you had no oil in the machine, it depends on your front end cover, because with this switch you can do it with the front end cover in place, but when you do this, there's no oil in the machine, so the float would be down. Then what you could do is you could fill it up with oil, and you would see the float rise on the inside and move like that. And then once everything, once you were set, then you would put in your cover here and make sure that you landed it with the arrow in the up position like this, and then you would lock down on your set screws, and you should be good to go with this switch. That's just a demonstration. And if you wanted to remove this switch, first you got to drain out the oil. Then what you need to do, after the oil is fully drained, is you need to pull the cover here, pull that cover off, then you can go ahead and unscrew it. Now, mine's broken, but normally this would be attached here, and then once you get to here, you just gently pull that through and bring that through like that. But on mine, because I did that improperly, I broke it. Mine is in two pieces, and that is why we bought a new switch. Now let's go ahead and prep our new switch and put it and install it. To prepare our switch to go inserted, we want to make sure that we're not going to leak at the threads. So I take some Teflon tape, I'm going to wrap this about 3 times. I usually do this with my all plumbing fittings. Now we know that there's no pressure here, so it's just atmospheric pressure is the crankcase, so it's no real pressure. So we don't have to go too crazy, but just about like that should suit me. But just to guarantee that there's absolutely no leaks. Now we are going to use some pipe thread sealant, which is PTFE, and so we should be completely good with this. So let's go ahead and get some of this on there. And just going to wrap the threads with this. Not too crazy, but just get some on there. And this will guarantee us no leaks. Okay, now we can go ahead and insert this into the compressor and get that screwed in. And make sure that when we start out, we don't cross thread. All right, we're good. We are completely good here. So first we'll start off with hand tight. And that's right there. And we'll take our wrench and now we'll go ahead and keep cinching that up. Okay, so right there is on top, but I'm going to go one more revolution because there's a lot of vibrations with the air compressor and I just want to have a nice sound connection here. Okay, right there, exactly on top. Alright, so now we can go ahead and put our probe in. Alright, I'm going to try to do this one-handed. Got my flashlight in here so you can see what I'm doing. There's a pin that I need to line up with here. And there we go. We're fully seated. I want to make sure I'm not obstructed by anything. And then when I come up, the switch makes on. When it comes down, the switch shuts off. Alright, it is very difficult to determine exactly if this is set correctly because it's unknown exactly how many quarts of oil it's going to take to make this switch. I have connected the switch to my meter, so I do know how much it takes for me to lift it up with my finger, but it's difficult to judge exactly by how many quarts. I know this machine takes 5 quarts of oil. So effectively the switch is installed and now I want to test it with how much oil it takes. In order for me to put oil in the machine, I have to put the front end cover on the machine. So I'm going to take some brand new compressor oil and I'm going to take my my thrust pin here and I'm going to lubricate it with some brand new compressor oil just to make sure that that's lubricated and good to go. So that's good to go there. On my gasket here, I want to dress the gasket. So I'm going to use this product here, which is called Never Sees, and it's just a matter of just taking your Never Sees and going and pasting it on like a little paintbrush. All we're doing is just making sure that if I need to take this gasket off in the future, this Never Sees will make that very easy for me to do so. Some compressor people will tell you that the gaskets are finicky and they need to be put on dry. I have not had an issue using this product. I've used it for many gasket dressing and I don't have an issue with it. And when you go to take the gasket off, this gasket will come off very, very easily compared to not using this product. So I absolutely want to use it. Look at this, I've already finished this whole gasket dressing and this is ready to go on. The bolts are 3/8 by 16 threads per inch and the torque value is 24 foot-pounds. 22 to 24 foot-pounds. So we're going to go ahead, get this on, and I'm going to start up here. Okay, the front end cover is on. All the torque values is set to about 23 foot-pounds. So I'm going to put my meter on. Continuity. When the switch makes inside, the meter is going to sound off. I'm going to start adding compressor oil and see how much oil it takes before that switch makes on the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and then I'm going to stop when the when the meter tells me the switch is made. I know it's a 5-quart machine, and I have 4 quarts in 1 gallon. This is pretty good so far. Oh, there it is. Almost 4 quarts of oil, and the switch is made. That's a good amount. That's a good safety measurement. So once we get below that on a 5-quart machine is when it's going to give us an alarm. Let me go ahead and take my dipstick now and see what the dipstick says is the level of the machine now that we've just made the safety. Come on. So now you put your dipstick in, you have to seat it down at normal. It's normal sitting threaded in connection. And now I'm just going to go ahead and see what we have. And there is an oil level here. So you can see that right there is where my current oil level is. Anything below that in the switch is going to not allow the compressor to run. So we need to be up here, which I'm sure will be at 5 quarts. And this is our operating range between here and here. So interestingly enough, normally when you look at a dipstick, you look at a dipstick and you think that the low oil level switch would come in right at the low mark right there, but on ours it's a little bit higher, so it's a little bit safer to have it over here. You don't want to go too much lower than this. So yeah, we're definitely in the safe zone. So I think we're totally good with continuing with this project and filling the remainder of the oil in. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, there you go. You can see that I am a little bit beyond the full mark, maybe a half a quart, it's hard to say. It snuck up on me a little bit. I guess I should have slowed it down a little bit towards the end. But it's splash lubrication, it's not pressure lubrication. I think being a little excess on the oil is not going to harm me. I think I'm okay in order to proceed. Otherwise, I'd have to pull the plug and drain out a little bit of oil if I wanted to get it very, very precisely right there. I think I'll be okay. Ingersoll Rand, they make these things practically bulletproof so they can withstand a lot of abuse. All right, now that our switch is on, front end cover is on. By the way, I hooked up all the tubing that needed to be connected to the front end cover. That's all taken care of. Correct oil amount, a little bit heavy on the oil, it's okay. Now we need to hook up the electrical. So I've got my electrical line from the switch connected right over here, and we need to connect to those 2 yellow lines that you see on the opposite side. Now, in case you're new to this, you want to make sure that there's no electricity on the lines you're connecting. So on my field piece SC77, I have an NCV, non-contact voltage. You push that, and that thing is buzzing off telling me that this is live. If you don't have that on your meter, you should definitely have a volt stick. Most people have these, and that's telling you with the beeping and with the red that we're live on the electricity. So we need to shut off electricity before we wire this thing in. So let's go ahead and do that right now. You'll see on my disconnect switch, I still have compressor 1 in the off position and only compressor 2 is on. We're working on compressor 1, but I need to have both disconnect switches off for that thing to lose electricity. So all I have to do is take disconnect switch 2, shut that off, and now we'll go ahead and test right over here and we'll see if we have electricity. Okay, here's our lines that we need to connect to. You'll see that there's nothing happening here. That was just a phantom. Don't worry about that. That's not live. We can also check NCV on my meter. Double check. Nothing. We're totally safe. So we're going to put the meters and stuff aside because we don't need that. We know we need these 2 wires here. Now, I just capped these with blue wire nuts, but I think orange is going to suit good. This doesn't really have a polarity, so in our case, polarity doesn't matter which wire you connect to which. So we're just going to not really be concerned, just making sure we got the right color combination, which in our case is green and black. We capped the red line and we're good to go there. And the black line here, we already know that our switch is made, so our compressor is going to be ready to run for the first time since the rebuild right now. I just want to verify my compressor rotation before I go hog wild on this thing. And so we have to do a small little inspection on that, but let's get this cover on. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the belt wheel, and we're looking for an arrow. Okay, you see that arrow right there? So that arrow, I know it's very, very difficult to see, but there it is right there. And that arrow tells me that this machine needs to spin this way here. Okay, so this is the direction it has to go in. I put a couple of arrows here just so I could make a visual reference for myself. So I'm going to go ahead and start the turn the switch on over there, and I'm just going to go ahead and start it, and I need to confirm rotation. I don't want to go and let it run too long, so I'm just going to basically bump it. I'm by myself, so it's a little harder for me to do. All right, in order for us to start this compressor, we got to put the fuses back in the system. Let's open up the electrical panel, which is off, but we're still live here. The fuses are just sitting here in the bottom of the compartment here. Fuses should be good, but since I'm going to be the installer, I might as well take the extra 2 seconds to verify that I got good fuses. I'm going to put my meter on continuity, go right here, touch like that. I have a good continuity test, and now I'm just going to test each fuse. That one's good. That one's good. Test this one. Okay, all the fuses are good, so at least I know that I got good fuses going into the project. Now, I am the installer of the fuses. I have the choice on how I want to put these. I can put them in upside down, turn them back, I can do whatever I want. When I install my fuses, I want the writing to be facing me, and I want the fuse to be installed right side up, not upside down. So I'm just going to take a flat-bladed screwdriver here. I'm going to hold this in here and basically just snap in top, bottom. And that's going to do that for all 3. Make sure that they're landed nice and solidly, and they are. Last one. Okay, we are totally good to go. I'm going to close my panel. I'm going to go ahead and lock down the, I don't even know what to call these. Lock down the panel connectors to make sure it's off. We're working on compressor 1. I'm going to bump this. I'm going to give you a camera angle over here so you can see the compressor while I bump it. I'm looking for anything weird. I also want to try to figure out if I got the correct rotation. So let's give it a bump and let's see what happens. Okay, we're going in the correct direction. We did make a lot of noise because I have the drain valve opened. I didn't want to, the drain valve is right here, and I know that I had it open because I didn't want to build up any system pressure. I still have the the main shutoff valve there closed. But now I saw that we were going in the correct direction. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up this, make sure there's no water in the leg. So I'm going to first of all open this up, make sure that we bleed out any water in the bottom. There's no water there. I can go ahead and open this up. Now the compressor is ready to be run for the first time with the correct rotation. Everything looks good. We got the right oil level. Let's give this puppy a whirl and see how she operates. The compressor did well. It took about the average amount of time in order to build up system pressure. We do have a very large tank here that we have to fill. Look at the size of this tank. It's pretty massive here. So we have a good sized system that we have to fill. I'm going to just go ahead and look around the machine, looking for any oil leaks, anything out of the ordinary, but full expectation that everything is going to be good. Basically, we've got a good system and we have a good safety in case we run into a low oil level situation because of that switch that we just installed. We feel very confident that we're not going to lose this machine due to low oil. Okay, that is going to conclude this video. If you got any information out of this video at all, please hit that like button to help me promote this video. Subscribe to my channel, Ken Training. I will catch you on the flip side.